What if your greatest threat isn't outside you, but inside, not in your enemies, not in your environment, but in the noise that's been allowed to roam unchecked, inside your own mind? You were taught that freedom means feeling everything, expressing everything, reacting to everything. But that version of freedom has only made you easier to manipulate. A mind without command becomes a war zone. Every thought fights for control. Every emotion interrupts reason. Every impulse demands action. And you call that authenticity. But here's the truth. You weren't built to be a democracy. You were built to be a system of order. Every powerful system has one thing in common: centralized control, non-negotiable clarity, a ruler that doesn't debate with distraction. Your mind needs the same. Not a soft inner voice, not a committee, but a dictator. The part of you that issues command, silences dissent, and builds mental order from the inside out. Without it, you don't think, you don't act, you react. And that's how you lose. Not to others, but to yourself. This isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about eliminating internal chaos. And that doesn't happen by being nice to your thoughts. It happens by enforcing order. The inner dictator has always been there. You've just silenced it, because the world told you control was dangerous. But now, you'll remember what control feels like. Not over others, over yourself. And once that returns, nothing else gets a say. They told you freedom was expression, that to be real, you had to let everything in. Say everything, feel everything, react to everything, and you believed it. But here's the truth. That wasn't freedom. That was surrender. When every emotion gets airtime, when every impulse becomes action, when every passing thought gets a vote, you don't have freedom. You have anarchy, and the most dangerous kind is internal. Mental anarchy looks innocent. It sounds like, I just feel like this right now. I'm just being honest with myself. I'm processing. But behind that softness is a system collapsing. Thoughts fire without direction. Emotions rise without purpose. And instead of leading the mind, you follow whatever's loudest. That's not awareness. It's instability. The same people who scream for freedom can't even finish a single thought without it being hijacked by doubt, fear, or distraction. They call it fluid, but it's just unfiltered, unstructured, unsecured. Because here's the thing. Raw thoughts aren't real thoughts. They're reactions waiting to be framed. And if you don't frame them, someone else will. Every algorithm, every conversation, every passive scroll is shaping the unguarded mind. The more open you are, the easier you are to rewire. And that's the trick. They told you to be open-minded, but what they meant was be programmable. Because when there's no internal structure, the loudest voice wins. Not the wisest, not the strongest, just the loudest. And if you've never trained your inner authority to speak louder than the noise, guess who rules your mind? Everyone else. So no, internal freedom isn't the goal. Not in the beginning. The goal is internal enforcement. To build a state of mental order where every thought must qualify, every emotion must earn its place, and every impulse answers to a higher code. That's where real power begins, and it's exactly what we build next. A single rogue thought can dismantle your entire day, not because it's true, but because it went unchallenged. That's how mental disorder works. It doesn't arrive with a warning. It slips in quietly, disguised as your voice. And once it gets inside, it multiplies. You start thinking in circles, doubting decisions you already made, feeling things that aren't connected to anything real. Suddenly, you're exhausted, but you haven't moved. That's not overthinking. That's cognitive insurgency. Thoughts that refuse to obey, emotions that hijack logic, impulses that override intention. And if you don't take control, your mind becomes a battlefield. With no general, every idea fights for dominance. Every distraction becomes a detour. Every trigger becomes a trap. You make choices, but none of them are truly yours. They're just reactions, flickers, loose sparks with no grounding. That's what happens when the inner chain of command collapses. And the enemy isn't external. It's the part of you that tolerates noise, that entertains doubt, that gives attention to weakness. You think you're being open. You're just being unguarded. You think you're being emotionally honest. You're just letting your system be overrun. Power doesn't come from feeling everything. It comes from filtering, from choosing which thoughts get oxygen and which ones get executed. Because in a mind without order, every idea survives, even the ones designed to sabotage you. You don't win wars by letting every soldier do what they want, and you don't win internally by giving every thought equal access. Some thoughts need to be locked down. Some emotions need to be interrogated. Some impulses need to be crushed before they spread. This is not suppression, it's command. And if you don't command the mind, it will become your captor. So the solution isn't less control, it's more, sharper, stricter, unapologetic. And it begins with installing a leader at the top, a presence within you that every thought must answer to. Now that you've seen what mental disorder creates, it's time to build its opposite. Order, structure, command, not inspired by emotion, but enforced by design. This is where your inner dictator steps in, not as a tyrant, but as the one force inside you. That doesn't negotiate with chaos, because when the world is loud and your mind is louder, you don't need more inspiration. You need control. You need someone inside you who doesn't flinch, who doesn't ask, who doesn't wait. You need a commander, a presence that says, no, that thought doesn't belong here. No, that emotion doesn't get a vote. No, we don't act just because we feel. This is strategic dictatorship. It's not cruelty, it's clarity. It's declaring, my mind is not public territory. It's governed, it's guarded, and every part of it answers to something higher. Imagine your mind like a state, and every thought must pass through checkpoints. Every emotion is logged. Every decision goes through internal review. That's how powerful systems operate. Not with feelings, but with protocol. So ask yourself, where is your protocol? Where is your inner enforcement unit? If the answer is nowhere, you're not in charge. You're just responding. Here's how the architecture of mental command begins. Command hierarchy. Not all thoughts are equal. Create ranks. Place intuition above insecurity. Logic above emotion. Purpose above pleasure. Emotional curfews. Certain feelings only get airtime at the right time. No decision is made in emotional surge. Emotion must stand still before it gets heard. Thought clearance protocol dash. Before a thought gets access, ask, is it useful? Is it true? Is it aligned with my mission? Silence as law. Any thought that causes chaos is met with silence, not reaction. The inner dictator doesn't argue. It dismisses. Because the real problem isn't distraction, it's permission. You've given too many thoughts permission to exist. Too many emotions permission to lead. Too many moments away. In the name of being human. But a sovereign mind isn't run by sentiment. It's run by structure. And when that structure is built, the chaos has nowhere left to go. It starves. It fades. It dies. And all that remains is signal, pure, unapologetic, focused. This is the mind they can't hack. The mind they can't shake, because it doesn't bend, it commands. Control isn't an accident, it's a system. You don't wake up with mental discipline, you install it. Line by line, command by command, like coding a firewall, not against viruses, but against unfiltered thoughts. Most people rely on motivation. That's why they fall apart. Motivation fades. Systems don't. This is how you install the code. 1. The morning directive protocol. The first 10 minutes of your day determine who's in charge, you or the noise. Before anyone speaks to you, before the world floods in, you issue the command. You declare the mission. You set the tone. You decide what thoughts are allowed to lead. You don't scroll. You don't react. You instruct. Because the first thought of the day should come from within, not from the outside world. 2. The interrogation sequence. Every thought must answer 3 questions. Is it useful? Is it true? Is it aligned with my objective? If it fails the test, it doesn't stay. No analysis, no emotional processing, just removal. 3. The zero negotiation rule. Some decisions are pre-coded, non-negotiable. No emotional appeals, no second guessing. You decide in advance how you respond to triggers, how you use your time, what gets your energy. Because if you wait until you feel like it, you've already lost. The enemy isn't just noise, it's delay. And delay is how weakness sneaks in, dressed as maybe later. So don't leave room for negotiation, leave room for execution. This is what inner law looks like. Not open discussion, not flexible policy, but command lines that govern behavior, even when emotion tries to interfere. Because your job isn't to manage your feelings. Your job is to lead your system. The code doesn't feel. It just runs, efficient, quiet, ruthless. That's what your mind must become. And once the code is installed, you don't need motivation. You need only one thing: access denied to anything that weakens the signal. You've installed the code, now you fortify the perimeter. Because even the strongest system can be compromised. If it leaves the gates open, a disciplined mind without boundaries is still vulnerable, not from within, but from what it allows in. This is where you become a fortress. Every thought, every image, every interaction must go through clearance. No input without inspection. Because every input is influence, and every influence has the potential to redirect your internal state. You wouldn't leave your door unlocked, so why do you leave your mind wide open? To scrolling opinions, unsolicited advice, emotional debris. Here's how to lock it down. 1. Content fasting for 72 hours. Consume nothing you didn't request. No feeds, no headlines, no opinions. Silence the algorithm. Starve the chaos. Let your mind reset to its own signal. Second, interaction filtering. Audit who speaks into your life. If their words don't align with your frame, they don't get airtime. This isn't cruelty, it's clarity, because influence is a privilege, not a right. 3. Silence calibration windows. Set 30-minute zones with no input at all, no music, no words, no stimulation. Why? Because only in silence can you hear what's been running unchecked. These windows become diagnostics. You observe what surfaces, and you evaluate it like a commander, not a victim. That's how you break dependence on noise. Because let's be honest, you're not addicted to stimulation. You're addicted to avoiding what silence reveals, and that avoidance is costing you your power. So take it back. Let solitude become your filter. Let boundaries become your firewall. Let silence become your advantage. You are not emotionally unavailable. You are strategically inaccessible. You don't explain your withdrawal. You don't justify your control. You don't broadcast your moves. Because the fortress does not advertise. It protects, it observes, it dominates. And now, your mind is no longer a hallway. It's a stronghold. No idea gets in unless it serves your mission. No emotion stays unless it earns its place. No thought survives without alignment. From here forward, you don't just think better, you permit better. And that changes everything, because the enemy can't break in if the gate never opens. By now, the choice is clear. You either rule your mind, or something else will. You've seen what happens. When thoughts go unchecked, when feelings set the tone, when impulse leads the way, that's not freedom. That's possession. You've been possessed by noise, by habit, by stories you never wrote. But that ends here, because now you don't just have awareness, you have architecture. Your inner dictator has returned, and with it the enforcement of clarity. You don't chase peace, you impose order. You don't manage emotion, you override chaos. You don't wait for discipline to appear, you install it, daily, ruthlessly, without apology. This is not a phase, it's a regime, and every day you let your mind wander. Without command, you're living under someone else's rule. So here's your first directive, 72-hour command challenge. No passive input, no emotional broadcasting, no external stimulation you didn't invite. Each day, write down every intrusive thought, classify it. Does it serve the frame? Does it align with your internal law? If not, neutralize it. Replace it with code, not affirmations, instructions, because your mind isn't a garden. It's a state, and that state demands governance. When people say, "You've changed," nod silently. Because you have. You've left the democracy of mental weakness for the cold, clean precision of total command. And what they'll never understand is this: a quiet mind isn't peaceful, it's armed, and you are the commander.